It's getting there, but it's just, it's been kind of weird. Thank you, appreciate it. All I can do. Oh, that's right. That's right. Thank you. So is, both councils today. It's better, I think. It's still congested. It seems to be moving, getting lighter and lighter. He actually mine never got that congested. Mine was all right about the Sudafed or tea. It just takes a while to turn around. About Thursday this week it was. The overlap started in your operation. No. Jeffrey?
I lost my brown and I went up
There's other excerpts, which is the same thing. Well, that's true.
Anybody who knows how to run this? No. Don, do you know how to start the program there? Anybody, Bob Dennis, maybe? What's that, Jim? The PowerPoint program for the class. I know James said he loaded it up, but it's not going.
So beauty.
Here we go.
Okay, hello.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, she's
That's
good.
it.
Yep. Just a little coffee.
Okay, I got you.
But she's gone.
don't start right there with this right here. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I know you're only supposed to eat like 4 or 5 minutes a day.
Yeah, I'd say, or an hour.
Yeah.
Getting there slowly. Not yet.
Still,
They're starting.
she's still a staff or there's the food, however, still at least. Don't spoil it out. Go send them money.
All right, I believe we're all here now and ready to begin. Let's bow and have a word of prayer. Our holy and sacred, great, righteous, heavenly Father, Father of lights, Father of life, Father of truth, the giver of everything that we have that is precious and good, true. Our Father, you're the only God of heaven and earth. You're the only one. You've created everything, and to you alone we give our gratitude, our thanks, our praise, our hearts and souls and sacrifice of our lives to you, for you will be the recipient of every soul that you have created. We pray, Father, that when we stand before you, you will see your Son in our lives. Please forgive us, Father, in our walk of life that we fail you. We pray that you will be patient and merciful. Forgive us. Thank you for this day. This is your day, Father. And we are grateful that you have set this day aside for mankind to come and to worship you. We pray that our worship today will be acceptable. This is a sweet blessing that we have to come together, to forget about the cares of the world, and now to open your word and to read it, to study from it. We pray that our study will be beneficial. It will profit us. It will feed our faith, and it will lift our spirits. We ask, Father, you will watch over our families and keep them safe. We also pray, Father, that you will watch over our country as it begins a new leadership. We pray that the years ahead will be years of peace and prosperity, that we all may be able to worship you without any fear or any interference. We ask that you will bless our leaders and be with the people, both those who are sympathetic and those who are not sympathetic to your word. We pray that you will give them hearts that will be good and minds that will be open to the truth, so that many will change their ways and turn from the world and follow you and your law. Please, Father, be with us now. Keep us in your love, and pray most of all that when our life is finished here, that you will bring us home to be your children, to live with you forever. Through Christ our Savior, we pray. Amen. All right, we're in chapter 23 of Acts, and we have been reading last Wednesday night about this confrontation between Paul and the chief priest and then the Roman commander of the garrison. And the commander is just trying to figure out what on earth is going on here. And he's got to stop everybody. And in the interim, 40 men take an oath that they will not eat or drink until they kill Paul. And somehow, some way, Paul's nephew heard that. How he did that, we don't know. But
when he heard that, he went to Paul and he said, Uncle Paul, there are people out here waiting to kill you. And they're calling for you to come to meet with them to discuss this charge even further. He said, they don't want to do that. They want to kill you. And he said, you go to the commander right now and tell him what you just told me. He goes to the commander, and to his credit, the commander here will accept him. He'll understand him. And he will at least have faith in him. And in verse 22, he said, depart and tell no one that you have revealed these things to me. And some of the last comments that we were making Wednesday night is that God had previously told Paul not to worry. You're going to go to Rome. You will see Rome. The gospel will reach Rome. You'll get there. But right now, it looks pretty dark. It looks it looks pretty dangerous right now. It looks like he may not make it because they're ready to kill him. The Romans take him into their garrison, and they're going to find out what's going on. And so when the commander here hears about it, finds out what's going on, we pick up in verse 23 this morning. And he called for 2 centurions, saying, prepare 200 soldiers. You remember a centurion was over 100 men. Century, 100. That's what a centurion was. He was over 100 men. So he has 2 centurions that are over 200 men and 70 horsemen, 200 spearmen to go to Caesarea at the 3rd hour of the night, in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning. This is what's going to happen, and they provide mounts to set Paul on. You know, when I first read that before, I wondered, how many horses has Paul ever ridden? You know, it wasn't in his lifestyle to ride horses. They would walk. Occasionally, someone might have a little donkey. But Paul strikes me as the kind of man that is going to be walking. What would the significance be? There are 200 soldiers, footmen, and there are 70 horsemen. And they put Paul on a horse. What would the significance be of Paul riding a horse in this entourage of men going to Caesarea? What do you think?
He's a Roman citizen.
He's a Roman citizen, that's right. You certainly have the right to do that. Lord?
I would think that prisoners would normally not be on.
Right. Prisoners normally would be chained and they'd be walking, but he is not chained and he's riding on a horse. What else could we see from this? What you think, Barry?
Well, there's been a threat of his life, so these guys are guarding it, so that he's going to be able to get away quicker if somebody attacks with their leadership rather than dragging him by the chains.
Great advantage to riding a horse, that if there is an ambush and you're on foot, you're not going to be able to go very far. And they can get you a sitting duck. But when you're mounted on a horse, you have a chance to get away. And you have a really good chance to thwart any kind of attack that would come upon him. The horse was the most important weapon of war in ancient times. Rodney?
So that's probably why they had the spearmen, because the spearmen, and if you look at old shows or anything like that, spearmen are in front with the horses, spears, and they just knock everything out, make it away, so.
Right. How are these 40 Jews going to be able to get in and take them? Daniel and John?
Maybe nothing to do with why they would put somebody on a horse, but I just like the simple fact that they're easy to identify. They're perched up instead of down in the mix of sea of men or whoever else. You know where they're at.
Right. They're after Paul, and they're putting him up there where everyone can see him. And they go, what's this all about, all these horses? Paul's sitting right up there on his horse. That's right, Paul. John?
Well, it's definitely a show of force here.
Right.
You would have to, seriously have to consider, is it worth getting Paul?
Yes.
And I think they're demonstrating that Paul is above you. He's looking down on you, you and your stupid conspiracy theory.
Right.
But he's above that because he's a Roman citizen and I believe him, so.
Yeah, that's a good point, that he's above them, and the Romans have already made a preliminary decision that we're gonna go with Paul right now on this one. We know there's gonna be a hearing, but if you think you're gonna take him away, just like witness protection is usually in secret. This is witness protection in public. You're out there to see it. Lou?
It's such a massive force that you almost would have to have another country send an army into a force that well made up.
Right. Yeah, they realize we don't have a chance here.
So
And-
did the 40 men then go kill themselves since they?
They are really hungry.
You know, those 40 men started Weight Watchers.
Okay.
They didn't eat. They figured out, how can I survive without eating here? I don't know what happened. Interesting, you think. I don't think it's too hard to imagine that. Yeah, they finally had to admit defeat
Yeah.
when they wanted that rack of lamb that Mama was cooking there. You know, the smell of cooking meat is one of the most powerful temptations. So I have been told by vegetarians. Vegans have said, man, that is a powerful temptation. Smelling that barbecue. So, now, anyone else, sir? All right, so Paul is just kind of, it's like, you know, just chill, Paul, sit back. They're going to take care of it. So they're taking care of all of the transportation things. Yes?
All this pomp and circumstance makes Claudius look very good in the eyes of powers of Rome. He's doing all the right things for a Roman citizen, and he's getting him out of his hair.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't want to deal with this.
That's right. They don't want that.
And so he's doing all the showy big deal of doing what he should be doing as a Roman governor.
Right, and we have to understand that under the Roman system, that there was a protocol. They just couldn't go out on their own and do whatever they wanted. There might have been a wide margin of tolerance for people who were non-citizens. But once you had a citizen in your hand, there was a protocol that they had to follow, and they would be in dire jeopardy of their position, job, or even life if they didn't follow that. So that's right. They're relieved to get him out of her hair. Rick?
Look, remember the Philippian jailer and also the guards at Christ's tomb, the penalty was they paid with their own life.
Right.
If they lost a prisoner or, you know, something went wrong. So he's taking every precaution to not let these Jews kill Paul.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Anyone else? Yeah, Mike?
Could this have also been one of the steps that Rome thought of when they finally tore down the temple in 70 AD, right? They're looking over those reports, and in that area, Judea, right, they had to get a Roman citizen out of the area, right? So when they're reviewing what's going on, this is one of the things that they might have thought of in 70 AD.
Yeah. You know, that's an interesting, I've never thought about that from that standpoint when they made the siege. You need to understand, of course, that it was a siege. They didn't go in and destroy it in one day. And the warnings from Christ, particularly Matthew 24, that Josephus would say that the Christians, the people who believe, they got out. No Christians were killed in the destruction of Jerusalem. We're speaking of in AD 70 when the Romans came to level it out. But this was a gradual process. So it's interesting to think about that any Roman citizen who would be in the city of Jerusalem, for whatever reason, would certainly get the message that we better get out of here. And it was the stubborn, zealous Jews that stayed to defend their home that were taken. So it's interesting to think about all the factions that are going on in this, even today, when trouble in the Middle East and dealing with factions from many different sides, and people have their own specific viewpoint, and then they become quite zealous and then militant to hold their view for whatever it may be. But this is clearly a scene of just utter chaos, a murderous chaos. They have blood in their eyes, the expression meaning they're ready to kill. The Romans understand this, the commander, and so they sneak out. They go out in the middle of the night down to Caesarea. Caesarea is down on the beach, and it's basically all sand dunes down there where Caesarea is. I'll show you here in just a minute. And they came to Caesarea in verse 24 and provided mounts to get Paul on and bring him safely to Felix the governor. And so this is the letter that the commander wrote when he sent all of these horsemen, these 200 soldiers, to accompany him down there. And this is what he wrote in verse 26. Claudius Lysias, to the most excellent governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews and was about to be killed by them. Coming with the troops, I rescued him, having learned that he was a Roman. And when I wanted to know the reason they accused him, I brought him before their council. I found out that he was accused concerning questions of their law, but had nothing charged against him worthy of death or chains. And when it was told me that the Jews lay in wait for the man, I sent him immediately to you, and also commanded his accusers to state before you the charges against him. Farewell. Now that's a very succinct but very complete notice to Felix. And this is who this man is. This is what happened, and this is my decision. And this is why he's here with you. And I have summoned his accusers to come and make their charge against Paul, and you can hear all of this. Verse 31 says, Then the soldiers, as they were commanded, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. The next day they left the horsemen to go on with them and return to the barracks. These are the soldiers, the 200 soldiers that are stationed permanently back at the barracks that we saw here next to the temple. So evidently they got to the point that now they got through the danger, and the rest of these men, the spearmen and the horsemen, they're all going to take him to Caesarea. And verse 32, the next day they left the horsemen to go on with him, returned their barracks. When they came to Caesarea and had delivered the letter to the governor, they also presented Paul to him. And when the governor had read it, he asked what province he was from. And when he understood that he was from Cilicia, remember he was born in Tarsus. Tarsus of Cilicia is where Paul was from. Then he said, I will hear you when your accusers also have come. And he commanded him to be kept in Herod's praetorium. Now, we're going to spend some time in the future on the city of Caesarea because it figures in directly to what we are reading here right now. But I'm going to show you this morning one portion of the city of Caesarea. And it's rather remarkable, everything that was built there by Herod the Great. This was his city. But we can see exactly where this last verse, where he was kept in Herod's praetorium, we know where that is. Now, if you go to Caesarea, they've got a visitor center. There's not a whole lot there other than just the old building. There's not a modern city. It's moved away. But there's a model here. And I know you can't quite see it. I'm going to try to pull it up a little bit better here because, well, let me come back here. This, so I don't block everybody's view. This is the shoreline right here. I mean, they didn't color it, but there's where the sea comes. So all of this stuff is on the seashore. And there's the theater, there's the big theater, the palace, racetrack, the port, the banks or the caches, and we'll talk more about that when we get to, this is where Paul will leave to go to Rome. But Paul is going to spend 2 years in this city. And he's going to spend those 2 years right here. This is the palace that Herod built. Now, it is in 2 tiers, and I'll show you the pictures here in a moment here. But this would be the courtyard, and here is the praetorium. This is the guardhouse. You know, if every king or president or something that has a mansion or a place to live, there's always a guardhouse. Sometimes it's really big. There's men there who are waiting to protect the king or prime minister, whoever, at whatever time. That's what this is, and that's where Paul stayed. And I'll show you what this looks like here now. If you went over there today. This is the palace. Now, there's basically 3 sections. Back here is the praetorium. Here is the palace. This would be where what we're going to read when the Jews come and question Paul. That happened right here. This is where Paul is going to make his defense before Felix, and then 2 years later to Festus. That's all going to happen right here. This palace, actually this whole city, but the palace was built by Herod the Great for him and then anyone else who would follow him to be their beach house. It's more than just their beach house. If you were the governor of Judea, say like Pilate was during the days of Christ, he has that garrison that we saw earlier, you know, that's hooked to the temple, right in the middle of the city, the noise, the filth, everything. You have that, and then you have this seaside villa that is your palace. Where would you spend most of your time? That's a no-brainer. Well, we'll find out a little bit more about this, is that these 3 sections, the Praetorium Guard right there, the palace, and then these people are looking down on something. And what they're looking down on is a pool. And this is more than just a pool, and there's not much of it left. But what this is this would be the private residence of the governor of Judea, or the prefect. And it was a pool that was surrounded on 3 sides by a double-deck series of apartments. It's where he lived. They had the view of the ocean everywhere, and this was the private residence. Now, here's what's left of this pool right here. And you can see the rock. These are all the foundations all around it where the palace had been built on this. Now, here's the crazy thing about this, is that when Herod built this, he filled this with fresh water. And he proclaimed to everyone that he did something that God could not do. He put fresh water into salt water. The height of his pride and of his arrogance is that this is Herod's pool. This was filled with fresh water, and they all came and lived and partied and everything right here. You could go to the beach next door if you wanted to get out in the salt water, but this was all fresh water, and it was built out into the ocean. There, the perspective. The shore ends right here. He built all this and stuck this out here. He wanted a pool in the ocean. So that's what he had. And then around the pool is where he's going to live. So he would be protected. People just couldn't come walk off the street and get to him. And Herod had plenty of reason to be paranoid. And so it became a very safe palace. And we'll talk more about Herod, Lord willing, later this year when we talk about the life of Herod and what he did. But this is this pool right here, and this is a drawing that is at the spot of what they think that pool looked like. This would have been the courtyard, and this would have been the pool, and these would have been the apartments that were around it, where the governor would live. There's a straight-on look at it from what it looks like. Obviously, it's full of salt water now. I guess Pilate's pool man quit after the crucifixion. I'm not sure, but it went to pot there. And so this, when you look at the pool, if you turn around, this is the Praetorium. This is where Paul would stay. For 2 years, he was on this spot, and this is the parts of it right here. There you can see the part of the columns that they would have here, and the little forts and the little cells that they would have along the way there, sometimes for prisoners that, not the common prisoner, but men like Paul, that they wanted to keep close, that they could use for their own personal political benefit or whatever. But we look at this just to see, pardon me, this is where Paul was. This is the view that Paul would have had for 2 years while he's there at Caesarea. And so God gets him to Caesarea by all of these horsemen, and now he's there. And, we all, cringe when we hear about Paul in the inner prison at Philippi and being beaten in Thessalonica and all of these terrible things where he is put and the terror and everything. But just let God lead him, and he ends up here. That's a pretty nice gig for 2 years. Just sit there, ocean breeze. Yeah, and as I have told you, this is the Mediterranean. It is so beautiful. It is so perfect. The climate is just like, okay, build me a cell on La Jolla Shores, and I'll stay there for 2 years. Sure, make sure I'm fed and all that, or up by the cove, and yeah, sure, that'd be good. I can do that. So Paul's there for 2 years, and they evidently treat him fairly well, as they're going to treat him the same way when he gets to Rome at the end of the book. Something about the Apostle Paul that men of position and substance recognized right away. We're not dealing with a flake. We're not dealing with some kind of fanatic or nut job. This man is a man of purpose, and he clearly is a man of great intelligence, and he is a man who is unapologetic for what he teaches, but he's also a man who is respectful. When they're about to beat him, he just mentions to them, by the way, is it lawful to beat a Roman citizen? So in his interactions with the Romans, people today probably, if they were in that position, as we see it, is just such an abomination. It is such a shame for this mark of mankind. People just go ballistic if they think they have been wrong. And if they feel like they have been slighted, in the very least, that their rights have somehow been, that they have been taken away, or they have been compromised, they just hit the ceiling. Paul's not that kind of person. And that's the kind of man that they can deal with. And they respect him. They don't know what all is going on here, and they already have a great disdain for the Jews because of their history. But Paul's different. So Paul is going to get this treatment, and no doubt, we see the providence of God when he tells Paul, don't worry, you're going to go to Rome. You're going to be my man in Rome. And it's going to happen. So this is an interesting thing as it happens. He gets here to Caesarea, and he's going to be questioned by his accusers here. And let me get back here. That's about all of that we're going to read here in these next few minutes happened right here at this spot, in the middle of these columns here, in this palace. Okay, any question before we move on to chapter 24 here now? All right, verse 1 of chapter 24 says, "Now after 5 days, Ananias the high priest came down with the elders and a certain orator named Tertullus." Now, why did it take him 5 days? It's a short journey from Jerusalem down to Caesarea. My guess is he's trying to, as lawyers say, get all their ducks in a row. They're planning their assault on Paul. The governor, Felix, is now calling them down here at Caesarea. We want to hear your side of the story, so it better be good. So they lawyer up, and they get this man. It takes them a few days to get it all together, and then they come down here, and they've got their plan of what they're going to say. And so Tertullus is going to give this testimony against Paul in front of the governor. Verse 2 said, "And when he was called upon, Tertullus began his accusation, saying," now listen to this. This is so, politicians don't change. They're just, they're all this way. They're born with this DNA in them, I guess. This is what he says, quote, "Seeing that through you we enjoy great peace." Right there. What a silly, foolish, contradictory statement. We enjoy great peace. They do nothing but riot and fuss and fight. But he's saying it's because of you, O great Felix, that we enjoy such peace. You're the good. You have brought peace to this land. This is so today. I just can't get past all that. "Seeing that through you we enjoy great peace, and prosperity is being brought to us, to this nation, by your foresight." You're the one that has taken care of inflation, and you have brought the economy up where everyone is now prospering. Verse 3, "We accept it always, and in all places, most noble Felix, with all thankfulness." What a big, fat lie. Yeah, he's saying, when we gather at the temple, we all get this. We are so thankful that Felix has made life so good for us. And we're all prospering. And we are so thankful. We rejoice that Felix is our governor. Life is really good here. Thank you, Felix. That's what they're saying. Probably about then I'm starting to throw up. Verse 4, "Nevertheless, not to be tedious to you any further, I beg you to hear, by your courtesy, a few words from us." Yes, we know you're a busy man, and we know that you don't have time for a lot of things, but in your graciousness, you will allow us a few moments that we might speak to you about this. Verse 5, "For we have found this man a plague." Wow, starting right off, he's a plague. That means he is a deadly, infectious disease that kills everyone he comes in contact with. The plague was something that we hear that word today, and we think, not nostalgically, but we think in history, yeah, that's right, there were times in Europe when they had a plague, and even in this country in the early years, there was a plague, and people think today, maybe, well, we had COVID, that was a plague. I don't mean to be disrespectful of anyone who's had, I know people who had it, I know people who died from COVID. But COVID doesn't begin to match the Black Plague in Europe or the plagues that ravage Africa. It's not even a drop in the bucket compared to that. Rodney?
I have an NIV that says troublemaker. That's way different than plague. I mean, a troublemaker, yes, I guess that's somebody that's going to make trouble and cause stuff. But I know Barry only has New King James. What does yours say?
Actually, I got the old King
is New King James, pestilence, plague, troubling. It's something that the moment you come in contact with, something goes bad. He's just a bad, bad man. That's how he starts out. Michael?
Obviously, I mean, God could give this info to Luke as he's writing it, but I'm curious, do you know where his fellow Christians are at this point? Because he gets to Jerusalem in his journeys, right, bringing the money. He goes to the temple, and then all this takes place. Are they following him? Like, do they have access to this ceremony?
Oh, to this ceremony? You know, I don't know. I would like to say Luke did, but I don't think so. They took Paul alone down there. They would have to come down to Caesarea on their own. And a few of them did board the ship with Paul. Luke did, to give an eyewitness account. But yeah, he does not have an entourage. No, he doesn't. These men are staying in Jerusalem, and he's on his own. But likely, now this is just hypothetically, just an idea. Once God has confirmed to Paul, you're going to go to Rome, he likely, at some occasion, would have been telling his brothers who want to go with him, no, you don't need to. You know, it could be dangerous for you. I have a guarantee from God. I'm not sure about you. So I really don't need you. If you want to come along, you can't stop them. But I would think that would be his attitude. But this was not a large group like he had earlier. He would, people would come and go. He would pick some up, and then they would drop them off. So at this point, he certainly came to Caesarea alone, and he is by himself in speaking in this defense. And so he said, Tertullus says in verse 5 again, we found this man a plague, a creator of dissension among all the Jews throughout the world. That is a big fat lie. Now, yes, there were Jews that got upset, but he's saying that Paul has brought dissension to every Jew around the world. That's just not true. To the contrary, where he went, we have already read in the second journey, he would go to a place, Jews would hear him, and they would believe what he had to say. And they were converted. And when he left, there were churches there that were meeting. We've already studied Corinth, Berea, Thessalonica, these places. That he was there for a while, and he left, and there was a church in place. There were some Jews, yes, that did fight, but in most of these they didn't. And so that's just not true. And what this is, I think what this illustrates is that oftentimes part of nature, mankind, is that when we understand, perceive, and accepted a particular thought or fact or event, we inflate it in our mind when we repeat it, and it becomes bigger and bigger as we retell it as stories. We're all aware of that. Some stories, you retell it, and each time it needs a little more flavor and spice and enhancement, so it gets bigger, and the next thing you know, it becomes absurd. Well, this fellow who should have known better, as an orator, he's likely, this is just my opinion, as an orator, he's likely more interested in how he is talking and how his message will be received, more so than the facts that he is speaking. Facts took a second backseat to the delivery. John?
Wasn't that, in my mind, that's what the 5 days were for. Here's our talking points, and they're hashing it all out, coming out with, okay, this is the best way to do this. And yeah, okay, let's pick someone who can talk.
Okay.
Let's put our best foot forward.
Yeah.
Let's bring this guy.
That's right. That's what I meant a few moments ago Why did they take 5 days? They're getting their act together. They're making a plan. You're right. And they had to get orator. Who are we going to get? Tertullus. He's available. All right, let's get him. Get with him. Yeah, go.
I think in a lot of it too, as you're going through it, and I'm even reading kind of ahead here, but these guys are trying to really, really, really paint a horrific picture of Paul in their own interpretation or depiction of him as best they can, just so that they can get the win over Felix on their side of the fence.
Sure. They want him dead.
They want him gone
They
completely.
want him dead.
Yeah.
Now, do we see any parallel similarity in the trials of Christ? The charge had been that, he is violating the law of Moses. Pilate doesn't care about that. So they changed their charge to, well, he preaches there is only one king. Now that would get the interest of a Roman leader, because Caesar is the king. And so they would change the charge that would fit the Roman mold of Jesus' preaching, that Caesar is not king, but that he is. And if they could turn it that way, now they've got a winning argument, and they're finally going to kill Jesus. That's what they're trying to do here. That's exactly right. So, he said in verse 6, he even tried to profane the temple, and we seized him and wanted to judge him according to our law. Now, when they said that he profaned the temple, do you remember what happened a couple of chapters ago? In chapter 21, we talked about the sin of supposition. Then look back at chapter 21 here. This is where Paul is first arrested, and the charges are being made at the temple. Verse 28 and 29 of chapter 21. These men cried out, saying, "Men of Israel, help! This is the man who teaches all men everywhere against the people, the law, and this place, the temple. Furthermore, he also brought Greeks into the temple and has defiled this holy place." This is what Tertullus is referring to. This is what he's saying. He said, he profaned our temple. But look what Luke says in the next verse, 29. For they had previously seen Trophimus, the Ephesian, with him in the city, when they supposed that Paul had brought him into the temple. It would be unlawful to take a Gentile into the temple. But Paul had spent almost 3 years in Ephesus, had made a lot of friends, and to the point of the people following him. He goes to Jerusalem. Trophimus is one of them. And they look and they see him in the market. Hey, look at that. That guy is an Ephesian. He's not a Jew, and he's really close with Paul. Paul has been in the temple. He took that man into the temple, which is against Mosaic law. See, they put one and one together and came up with 8. And they're adding this all up. And so now, as we hear today, and it's so true, but this is what's remarkable. It was just as true 2,000 years ago as it is today. If you say something and repeat it often enough, you begin to believe it as fact. When you say it, then when you hear someone else repeat or parrot what you've said earlier, and another person repeats that, now, well, it's fact. You've heard all these people, this is the fact. Was that 1 or 2? 1. Okay, good, thank you. All right, so back here to our text, when Tertullus is speaking to them, he says in verse 6 that he has profaned the temple, and so we seized him and wanted to judge him according to our law. But the commander Lysias came by and with great violence took him out of our hands. Now, this will be our last thought today. let's look at this. Yes, back in chapter 21, there was great violence. He sent his soldiers to get him out of that and get him into the garrison. And it's when Paul stops on those steps going into the garrison and says, let me talk to him. Okay, who started this violence? How did this violence erupt? Back in the temple, when they saw Paul, saw that he was violating, in their mind, the law of Moses, they said, we need to kill this guy. They are the ones who incited the violence. And it was the guard who were reacting to it. But how is Tertullus spinning this? Doesn't this happen today? All the time. Tertullus is saying, now, we wanted to take him out and talk to him about that because this was our business, it was our law, and it was a matter within the family. And then Lysias shows up with his soldiers and with great violence takes Paul away from us. Oh, if you'd just let us alone, everything would have been just fine. What a big bag of wind. And what a false speaker. He may have been a good orator, but he didn't necessarily teach the truth. Remember that. Great orators don't always have the truth. They may sound good, but they're not speaking the words of the gospel. Very important to recognize that. Apollos is a great orator. To his credit, he wasn't teaching the truth exactly. And who was it? Ananias and Sapphira took him aside and taught him. Aquila and Priscilla, took him aside and taught him the way more perfectly. And Apollos went right with it. He wanted the truth. Great thought about that. But here's Tertullus. I can just see this guy dressed up in a three-piece toga, shark skin. This is, everyone is so glad in his mind that he's there to talk to him. So he said, verse 7, Lysias came by and with great violence took him out of our hands, commanding his accusers to come to you. By examining him yourself, you may ascertain all these things of which we accuse him. And the Jews also assented, that is, they agreed, maintaining that these things were true. So it wasn't a private hearing. To Michael's question, how many people were there? I don't know how many people would be there who were supporting Paul. Likely very few, if any. But there was clearly a group that were supporting Tertullus. And they want him dead. And he has just finished his wonderful oration of now he rests his case. And so this is where Paul stands. And so Paul is going to have to respond to that. And it's a wonderful response. And we'll pick up there Wednesday night when we see Paul's response to this great orator Tertullus, who is speaking half-truths. And the commander wants to get to the bottom. Thank you for your good attention. Any question before we close? Okay, we'll pick up there Wednesday night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not always great orator.
Nothing has changed.
No, nothing new.
Yeah, people change, but different faces, but the same nature. Right.
Huh?